Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. We're happy to have you in for another show. We've got Titans football to react to. An interesting game that got a little spicy at the end between the Tennessee Titans and the Seattle Seahawks. Preseason game number 2, a 16-15 win in favor of Tennessee. 38 players for the Titans not dressing for either injury purposes or rest. So a mixed and matched collection of players out there trying to earn back-end roster spots and doing so in a 1-point win on Saturday. We're happy to have you until 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045 is the number. Jackson, Lucas, and me. We've got you covered. You've also got the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch if you would like to interact. So you guys were back here watching it from the studio, getting ready to do Titans Talk Back, and taking it in from the press box at the game and kind of seeing what the vibes were before kickoff officially happened. We knew that Malik Willis was going to start, but we didn't know for how long, with whom, and how many others who would be considered starters in the traditional sense would be made available to actually participate in this game. Turns out none. I mean, the entire starting offensive line, which now includes Dylan Radins for the foreseeable future, and we'll touch on that later, did not play. Treylon Burks, who is technically a starter, in for DeAndre Hopkins, who is DeAndre Hopkins' primary backup. Sounds like they are preparing for Treylon Burks to be the starter in week 1.
That's not what they're targeting for, but they're preparing for.
Targeting, but what they're preparing for at this point, with DeAndre Hopkins dealing with that knee sprain. Brian Callahan said they did expect him to be back, Hopkins, at the facility this week. He's been in Los Angeles working with specialists on his recovery. So, 38 starters: Will Levis, J.C. Latham, Tavondre Sweat, Treylon Burks, all guys who I think most fans would probably consider fringe or dudes that need the reps. Did preseason game interviews with the television broadcast with Corey Curtis on the sideline, and are preparing to play at least 3-ish series, according to head coach in the finale in New Orleans on Sunday.
Nick Folk started.
Yes, he did.
Morgan Cox.
Yes, he did.
Otherwise,
that's the list.
That's it. Maybe I'll add Jaquan Jackson to that, because I think he's your starting punt returner.
Okay.
But that is something that is TBD later in terms of an official starter at that spot.
Now, I was kind of confused by their process here, because the plan, at least in pregame, to hear Brian Callahan on Titans Countdown after we wrapped up outside the stadium with the Lee Company Countdown to kickoff, Brian Callahan said that they were going to rotate quarters between Malik Willis and Mason Rudolph. And then what ended up happening is Mason Rudolph got in there in the second quarter after Malik Willis played the bulk of the second quarter, and then Mason Rudolph started the third quarter, and ultimately both got an opportunity to go out there and win the game. At the end, Mason Rudolph ultimately set them up for success, and a 46-yard field goal attempt by hero of the game, Braden Narveson. How many Titans fans knew Braden Narveson prior to Saturday's preseason game, where he hits a 59-yarder that the head coach has to be talked into by special teams coordinator Colt Anderson? Did you happen to catch that?
I did, yeah. Colt Anderson told him to kick it.
And then hits the 46-yarder to win it, 16-15, as time expires, in a well-executed 2-minute drive for Mason Rudolph. Do we feel any differently about the backup quarterback conversation today than we did Saturday before kickoff?
No.
I agree. I thought that Malik Willis looked better on the whole. I thought that prior to the interception, I thought he was playing better in the second half than he was in the first. And for the most part, I think, Lucas, you described it this morning. I don't want to steal your thunder here, but when we were preparing the show this morning, you said it felt like he missed more throws than he actually did. And then you go back and look at it, and he only had 4 incompletions. In fact, he completed 75% of his passes.
12 of 16. Maybe it was the nature of the misses early on. He held the ball too long and took a sack. He missed a wide open Nick Westbrook-Akine over the middle of the field. That would have been a big chunk play. Obviously, he was too high on the interception intended for, I believe, David Martin Robinson over the middle of the field. So it did feel like he had more misses than he did, but you look at his numbers, and 12 of 16, you could do a lot worse. The numbers were pretty similar between the two, apart from obviously Malik having an interception, not having a touchdown, and Rudolph having a touchdown and no turnovers. But I will say that last drive, the game-winning drive, 2-minute, to get into field goal range, to set up the game-winning 46-yard field goal.
They get it, what, minute 55 left on the clock?
Minute 55 on the clock to go get a game-winning field goal. And watching Mason Rudolph on that drive felt like watching a veteran backup quarterback, right? He's getting guys to the line of scrimmage. He's telling them where to be. He's making quick decisions with his legs, with his arm. He's just marshaling the offense down the field to get them into field goal range. So I have never thought that this was truly a competition. Always felt like Mason Rudolph was going to be QB2 from the jump. But after watching that drive, you just think, okay, Malik has improved. It's a credit to him. But to me, that last 2-minute series, that's what a veteran backup looks like in the NFL.
So Malik Willis ultimately had the biggest completion of the day, a nice pass, a 24-yarder to Jaquan Jackson, who had a great day receiving and as a special teamer. And then for the backup quarterback conversation, you'll hear from Brian Callahan. In fact, Jackson, if you could do me a favor and pull that off my Twitter timeline from yesterday, because we did have a post-game recap press conference with Brian Callahan. Immediate post-game, we've talked about this. It's kind of tough. They don't see all the different angles when they're on the sideline. It's a different kind of an evaluation after they've had the opportunity to watch the film, and I do think we're going to learn a lot from Brian Callahan's recap press conferences this year, if not the immediate post-game. And so yesterday, he was talking about both quarterbacks and kind of the situational work that they got. But to your point, it's funny. Mason Rudolph is the most known commodity at quarterback on this roster.
Yep.
Will Levis is question mark. Malik Willis is promising, making progress, but question mark. And Mason Rudolph is what Mason Rudolph has been for the vast majority of his NFL career, which is consistent, reliable, and immobile. Except on that designed run for Mason Rudolph, which shocked the world because nobody saw it coming, including, I'm sure, Mason Rudolph.
Now, I think he can move a little better than people give him credit for. He's a big body. He's a big guy. But, he is he is who he is quarterback
Correct.
on this team, right? We know exactly what Mason Rudolph is.
And I love that.
Yeah, sure.
I feel safe. Yeah. I feel comforted by that. I love the idea of having a proven, reliable, veteran backup quarterback who has seen live game experience, who, in fact, helped his team make a postseason push last year, even if it was kind of futile, and Lucas would take that away from him because he didn't believe that the Steelers were real last year.
They were not. They were not Super Bowl contenders, like you wanted to say they were.
If you're playing in the playoffs, you're competing for a Super Bowl.
Now, he is a backup for a reason, right? Yep. Like, he's going to miss some throws. And
there were some misses.
He has in the preseason.
And listen, there was pressure because they were playing with 2s and a lot of times 3s on the offensive line, and there was pressure consistently in both quarterbacks' faces. So that's not something you don't want him under duress a whole lot. It's going to lead to mistakes, obviously. But on the whole, I thought it was telling that, and they shouldn't be individually defined by this exclusively, but I thought it was telling that when Malik Willis got the second to last drive, he threw an interception that could have lost them the game in that situation because the ball is way too high for David Martin Robinson, who I believe is listed somewhere in the area of 6'4". So overthrows it, tip drill interception. Seattle gets an opportunity, but they go 3 and out. So the defense gets the Titans offense the ball back, and Mason Rudolph with 1:55 goes in the game and executes nothing sexy, nothing super flashy, but it's efficient, it's methodical, it has timing and rhythm, and that is still something that I'm looking to see from Malik Willis as far as the operation. There is absolutely improvement, and I do not want to take it away from him. And I think Blaine was great on the pregame show in particular, where he said you have to be happy for Malik Willis to get this opportunity because it is an additional opportunity to get an expanded look. Not everybody gets that, and he's a quarterback, so it's different. but you had to be happy for him to have the opportunity. I'm sure he fell short of what he wanted to do out there, if you asked him in an honest moment. And I thought he was pretty transparent with us after the fact in the postgame.
They went 3 and out, yes. Titans did get the ball back, yes. But the interception still led to points, right? The Jason Myers 50-yard field goal put the Seahawks back in front and forced the Titans to have to put together a 2-minute game-winning drive.
615-737-1045 is the number. Let's get to some phone calls. You can chime in what you saw that you liked, that you didn't like from a lot of reserves in the Titans' second preseason game, a win 16-15 over Seattle. Let's start with Chris.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
Just had an observation kind of question with Malik's ability with his legs and the run and being big and athletic. Would it be beneficial for him, the Titans, or whatever team he ultimately ends up with, because he's not QB2, to be transitioned into a Taysom Hill type role where he can be moved around, or is it too late in his development to do something like that? You want to see the guy succeed, like y'all said, but with his athletic ability, there's potential there for some big plays somewhere.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the notion, Chris. Here's the thing. So you're asking, is it too late in his development to kind of make that pivot? I would argue it's too early to kind of punt on his ability to play quarterback, because he's just in a different phase than your average NFL quarterback who's going into year 3. And I don't think that it has to be a bad thing. I just think that any team that wants them as a part of their roster has to be understanding of that and is banking still more on potential, because I do think that he has potential to be a backup quarterback. Right now, we're seeing how he progresses en route to becoming a backup quarterback, because famously, the last 2 years, he hasn't been capable of being an adequate backup.
It's not like the Titans are short on guys that can make plays with the ball in their hands, right, in 2024, like they have been for the last couple of years, and they tried that with Malik the last couple of years. You have players that you can be creative with. The 2 running backs, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Traylon Burks, Chikakonkwo, all guys that can make plays with the ball in their hands.
Sure, but you always take more.
Sure. But
goal line stuff, any kind of, should they make the postseason, and they've been working on this particular package all regular season long just to save it for the right moment to deliver some kind of like early momentum swing, right? Like those things can exist. It just doesn't have to be. Taysom Hill is a far more frequent part of what New Orleans has done in the last couple of years than I think what we're talking about for Malik Willis, which would be theoretically just very, very situational.
Yeah, and he was that from the jump, right? Hill was returning kicks for the Saints in his second year as a pro.
So we will get to stock up players who improved their percentage chance, in our estimation, of making the initial 53-man roster, because that roster reaper is right around the corner with one more preseason week left to go. We'll do stock up first, stock down later in this first hour here on 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. You know what I saw from the press box this week that made me very happy? Hattie B's at Nissan Stadium.
Oh.
What a development.
What? I'm so jealous.
The Titans are so smart. Look at that. That's probably the best offseason decision they made all year.
That was the pregame meal?
No. Hattie B's in the stadium is in there as a
yes.
Hattie B's storefront.
Yes.
In the stadium, which I did not realize until very recently.
Yes.
So I was very excited to see that.
Very smart.
No, in the press box, it was the same chicken tenders I've been eating for my entire life. Which, by the way, they're consistent. I will go get the chicken tenders every time at all the press box food options at Nissan Stadium, and I will say that it has significantly improved.
Yeah. No Hattie B's, though.
First season? No, I should. I'm honestly just going to start going down to the concourse. I got Martin's Barbecue, no free ads, but I love Martin's. They've got all kinds of great options down there at Nissan Stadium. So I may be willing to risk it all for some Hattie B's at halftime. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join in preseason football reaction. Stock up and stock down. Do you have one for stock down or just the bell?
Just the bell.
Okay, very good. We will do so. Liam Neeson. What's he doing back there? I haven't heard from him in a while.
I haven't heard him pop up in a
dust
while.
him off.
Jackson just pulling him out of a closet. He's just kind of sitting back there in the equipment closet.
I'm telling you, all kinds of... You guys think that I send people to the shadows as some nebulous place? No, people exist in there for years, and you never hear from them again until such time as they make a reappearance. We'll see if we can't use some more Liam Neeson later. Phone calls first, stock up next, then stock down to end the first hour. Gil in California is up first.
Hey, Buck, I was going to go stock down on Malik Willis.
Okay, that's fine. We can start there.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good kid or whatever, Buck, but it's like, it's 3 years now. I'm going on the third year. He's still yet to throw a touchdown pass. To me, he can't read defenses good enough, and he uses his legs too fast. And just like we got Dobbs the other year, I think we can find a veteran if Will Levis goes down to come in and back up our other backup. And I just think that we can use another player, and maybe he can go somewhere else. But I just think his time in Tennessee is basically done. I mean, we've watched him, and he just can't read defenses. And I think once the season starts and those defenses get more complicated, I mean, I just can't take the turnovers. So I just sit back and listen.
Thanks for the call. You have to protect the football, and in a critical situation, he had a turnover. That was on him. The emergency quarterback stuff, and Jackson, you have that audio that I sent you scurrying for earlier? Because I asked Brian Callahan about both quarterbacks and the emergency quarterback rule and how it might be advantageous to them. So let's hear from Brian Callahan on both quarterbacks from Saturday night and also the emergency quarterback rule.
It's good to see. It's good to see them both be competitive. It's good to see Malik have some opportunities to play a little more in this game, which was good to see. He does some things with his legs that only he can do. He ran for some yards and got out of some trouble. That was encouraging. He can really throw it. He put some good throws out there on tape. Mason shows his veteranness when the 2-minute drives, being able to move us in position to score, I think goes a long way for him. That's really good to see. He's calm, he's collected, he makes really good decisions with the ball, and so I thought they both did really good things, and I don't really have a lot negative. I think we'll let this thing play out another week, but I think they both done really good things, both for themselves, just as quarterback play, they put some good stuff out there, so encouraged by both of them, really, and I think that, this time next week we'll be able to make a decision and determination on who the two will be, and then what happens with the third spot, if we keep three or if we put practice squad three or if we just go with two. So we'll let it go one more week before we dive too far down that road.
How much of an advantage is the change to the emergency quarterback rule this year?
It's an advantage to some. It's nice to have, but you still have to keep. It's still an active roster spot, So it's. You got to make that determination on a week-to-week basis if you're dealing with injuries or you're concerned about it. It is nice to have, though. I mean, to be able to do that is a good thing. But there's still an active part of that where it's not a free spot, which would make it a lot easier if it was just free and you could keep three and didn't count for your 53 or your 46. But it still does. Unfortunately, that's the tough part. But it's a good option to have.
Yeah. That was Brian Callahan speaking about the quarterback situation and also the emergency quarterback rule. So it is nice to have the change to the rule. And if you're unfamiliar, the rule used to be that the emergency quarterback had to occupy an active roster spot. Now, emergency quarterbacks can be called up on game day from the practice squad. So that does allow for some variance there and some wiggle room, if say.
But it occupies a game day roster spot.
Correct. It is something that they can use at their disposal if they decide that 3 quarterbacks at the start of the season is the best route to go. Because, and I said this last night, and I almost felt bad about the way that I characterized it, but like I called Malik Willis the devil that you know. And I don't want to, because it almost has a negative connotation to it in terms of just the word devil, right? It's not, I don't want to assign too much meaning to that. But say you do decide that 3 quarterbacks is the best route for this team to pursue, rather than go out and find, another Josh Dobbs type of spot duty situation. And that was a bit of a shooting star, right? Like Dobbs coming in and having that much success, parlaying it into more success, even if it didn't translate into wins at the end of the year. And you can question the officiating on that, I think. What he did was very impressive and kind of lightning in the bottle-esque. Malik Willis has been here. He's been here for 3 years. He's been working under this coaching staff. He knows the system and is progressing in the offense. I would think you would prefer to try and find a way to stash that guy as opposed to say what the caller is presenting, which is, dump him and go find another 3rd quarterback to come occupy that roster spot, at least this year.
But I'm confident you can put Malik Willis on the practice squad. And
you don't think somebody will scoop him up on waivers at all?
The risk reward is not that dangerous for me. Like, okay,
not that dangerous.
If he gets scooped up, then okay. But
no, it's not the end of the world. But these are the kind of decisions that are going to determine 4th tight end, additional off-ball linebacker. Like this is a complicated one, and they do have some interesting fringe roster guys.
I feel like we've been operating under the assumption they're going to keep 3 quarterbacks. That they're going to keep all 3. Like we've kind of been talking that way.
It feels that way to me.
And I'm not so sure.
Okay.
Like, first of all, the Bengals last year, and I know this is Brian Callahan's team. He's not going to do everything like Zach Taylor did, but that's the biggest point of reference that we have.
Agreed.
The Bengals last year. Remember all the preseason talk about Joe Burrow? Calf injury, suffered early in training camp. Was he going to be ready? The Bengals had every reason to start the season with 3 quarterbacks. They started with 2, Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. I don't see this big need to start the season with 3 quarterbacks. Because I think since the emergency quarterback rule came into place, we way overblow it. How many instances can you name in NFL history where a team has had to go down to an emergency player at quarterback, where the starter and the backup got hurt?
Just the most recent where Purdy's, what was it? Did he some kind of tendon in his elbow?
Elbow, right?
Some kind of elbow issue? Like his elbow essentially exploded in the playoff game, and then they had to go down to, was it Josh Johnson? And then Josh Johnson got hurt, and then McCaffrey had to take snaps. I can remember specifically McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley having to do that here in recent memory, but beyond that, I wouldn't be able to pinpoint one in my frame of reference.
You know how many times it's happened in Titans history?
Ooh, good question.
Zero.
Sure.
It's never happened. So I do think that just because this rule was put in place, because of that instance in San Francisco, that we overblow it and it's this big discussion point. I would not bat an eye if the Titans chose to keep 2 and Malik Willis goes down to the practice squad. And if he gets swept up, it's not this big loss, right?
But no, who's treating it that? The only reason that we're assigning even this much airtime to it is because it is the most important position.
Sure.
Right? And that player in particular, I think there was and I feel like we talked about this, at least we did on the air. I feel like people attach themselves to Malik Willis as being something before he was even remotely close to being whatever he might become as an NFL player. And there does seem to be, at least for some people, I don't know how much feedback you got on Titans Talkback, I imagine quite a bit. There is, for some Titans fans, a significant attachment.
There is.
For some reason that, beyond he's a lovely human being, but there are a contingent of Titans fans that are really, really attached to this guy for some reason.
Malik Willis, yeah.
So I'm not going to discount it entirely. And also because it's the most important position, And we know that the thing why why Malik Willis is interesting to fans at all is because what do we talk about? You know what Mason Rudolph is. You don't really know what Will Levis is. You don't really know what Malik Willis is. And so the conversation around those two can become much more interesting because there is all kind of possibility and potential in both situations, even though they're not exactly parallel situations. Well, they're obviously not parallel situations. So let's get back to stock up. Stock up, I want to give it to Braden Narveson, but they're saying it's not going to make a difference in the kicking competition, so I don't know whether to make it stock up or stock down.
But it's still stock up. It can make a difference for Braden Narveson.
Agreed.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and Callahan said that after the game. He said he has that on tape now, even though Callahan ceded, Nick Folk's still our kicker.
Undrafted rookie free agent, wearing number 47, as all undrafted rookie free agents have to do. And comes in, makes a handful of field goals in this game from 21, from 59, and the game winner from 46. Now, unfortunately for him, the Cowboys kicker, Aubrey, hit from, the broadcast said 66. I think it ended up being marked at 65.
Oh, okay. But
still. I mean, it's ungodly what the Cowboys kicker did. So didn't let Braden Narveson have his moment in the sun for too long. But it was reported that Braden Narveson was not supposed to even play in this game. He was dealing with some kind of illness in the morning. They thought flu game type of situation. So the undrafted rookie free agent kicker comes in a big spot and wins the preseason game on a 46-yard field goal.
Do you think there should be
competition.
More discussion about the kicker competition?
I am inclined to say yes, because I know that Nick Folk cannot do that, like from that distance. Now, what I do know about Nick Folk is that he can do just about everything else. Mm-hmm. And I have covered a season, and many of you have lived that season, where the Titans went through, in total, including kickoff specialists, 9 kickers in an NFL season. So I think that Amy Adams-Strunk is more than happy to cut Nick Folk's check as long as he makes the field goals. And I think there's going to be a part of the audience that says, well, why not? He'd be less expensive. You can use, potentially that money for something else, even though Folk's only on a 1-year deal. And by the way, Narveson is a great practice squad nominee if he doesn't get scooped up by another team. Because I do think that there's some level of consistency to his game that needs to be ironed out. We've seen that in practice. So I'm fine with the idea of not going completely new this year. And if you have a team that if you get inside of 50 yards, Nick Folk is basically automatic.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of pressure off a young offense that's still trying to grow and develop rather than put it on the leg of Narveson that's going to come with a lot of variance.
Dyson on Titans Talkback brought up the comparison of when Ryan Stonehouse kind of came out of nowhere, right? And Brett Kern was just going to be the Titans punter again. And then here's Stonehouse with this giant leg, UDFA out of Colorado State. And Kern is cut, Stonehouse is your guy, and obviously that was the right decision for the future of that position. So there are obvious parallels there, but I'm not willing to jump the gun here. I think a lot of people are just, after that one preseason performance, saying, cut Folk, get rid of him. Narveson's the kicker. I'm not going to act like we've been paying close attention to the kickers at training camp.
I don't know. We've been paying pretty close attention. Easy for me to say.
But it's not like Narveson has been stealing headlines at camp, right? And consistency was the thing for him throughout his college days at 3 different stops, by the way, at Iowa State, WKU, and then NC State. He's obviously got a big leg. It's a cool story, but I'm not ready to go ahead and say that's a really important position to, after one preseason performance, say, cut the veteran that's been nothing but reliable in his career.
The difference between, I think, people who watched it in the preseason game and you and I is we've seen practice. And it's looked less spectacular in practice, let's say.
Big Z on the F&M Bank chat says, I watched Narveson for 3 years at WKU. You don't want him on your roster.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
No, it was a really cool story. Obviously cool for Colt Anderson to have that faith in him to hit the 59-yarder, and he drilled it. I mean, it could have been good from 63, it looked like.
Yeah.
So really, really cool story, and obviously you'd love to keep him around any way you can.
615-737-1045 is the number. Do you have a stock-up candidate before we go back to phones?
I have a few. I mean, I think Jaquan Jackson is on this roster. It's hard to imagine Jaquan Jackson not being on this roster.
I agree.
Leads the Titans in receiving, flashed on a punt return, had a 19-yard kickoff return. just a mature player, just continues to show up. Has he been the most consistent wide receiver in Titans camp?
No.
No?
No.
Because we brought him up every single week. We brought him up in the first preseason game. We brought him up every day at joint practice against the Seahawks.
I don't think
he was the best receiver on the field on Saturday.
Practice for Calvin Ridley is enough for me to say that he hasn't been very consistent at what it is. I appreciate what you're saying about Jaquan Jackson. I think he's gotten incrementally better.
And he's playing against 2s and 3s for the most part.
I am not going to give him that much credit just yet, but I wouldn't put him too far off. But I don't think I would say that he's the most consistent wide receiver at Titans camp so far through this. It's now a month. We're coming up on a month of Titans camp.
Fair enough. But he just keeps showing up. He just keeps showing up, and it feels really
passionate
hard
about this
to keep Jaquan Jackson off of this team.
Just you rushing to extremes yet again. The best game I've ever seen from a wide receiver in the preseason game.
Greatest receiver of all time.
David is up next. Hey, David.
No, NWI is the most consistent. Timothy is right.
I mean, he is a legend. Oh, your phone line.
That's a great point.
We can't do that. Is there another David?
Another David.
Another David.
Is he on a different phone line?
Let's find out.
A different quarterback.
Sorry, first David. Your phone line was terrible. Give us a try later. Let's try this David.
Hey, this is David from Nashville. How you doing, my man?
Good.
Good. I just want to make a comment. I think what's going to end up happening is I like the way Mason Rudolph plays. I think Will going to end up getting hurt. Mason going to come in, take over. He going to end up being the starter, and he going to leave Will Levis laying on the sideline over there, dipping his finger in a mayo jar. That's what I think.
I appreciate that, David. Dipping his finger in the mayo jar.
That's what we call a bold prediction.
Well, if that happens, David, I can assure you, not that we aren't must listen anyway, but if that happens, this radio show will be must listen for the foreseeable future, because then Lucas will retract his apology AI poem and take a victory parade through the streets. Stock down coming up next. We do have a few more stock up candidates. We didn't get to nearly enough there. Your phone calls are welcome. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Martin Lawnscapes. I am here to tell you that if you are like me and you have let your lawn get a little raggedy, get a little shaggy here lately, Martin Lawnscapes is here to help you. I am busy right now with football season, and I've kind of let my yard and my landscaping fray a little bit. Lee Martin and his team have been serving Middle Tennessee since 2011 while providing a strong reputation for high quality but affordable services. Let me tell you why Martin Lawnscapes is different. They offer a free estimate. They will give you an honest assessment of what it takes to make your project a reality or better options for your space. They offer fair pricing in an economy where everyone is blaming inflation. Martin Lawnscapes is known to keep it fair. Since they own their equipment, there is no upcharge for rental or equipment or staff. Just fair upfront pricing from the beginning. I am looking forward to getting an estimate from Martin Lawnscapes myself because I have a lot of different things at the house that need to get done. So whether it's hardscapes, retaining walls, overseeding, or aerating, Martin Lawnscapes has you covered. You can follow them online on Instagram at Martin Lawnscapes TN or visit the website www.martinlawnscapes.co. www.martinlawnscapes.co.
Third down play, 3 receivers to the right. Walker going to look that way. Going to be in trouble. Going to be sacked! There he is again. That's Jalen Harrell, his second of this ball game.
Mike Keith and Titans Radio on the call of Saturday's preseason win for the Titans over the Seattle Seahawks, 16-15. Jalen Harrell, the 7th-round rookie out of Michigan, continuing to make an impact, getting a lot of work in Saturday's game where 38 Titans players, starters, and role players did not play due to injury or just rest. So we're going to get to stock down here in just a second, but there's a handful of stock up candidates that I'm going to fight you.
Come in at the most inopportune times.
The joy that it gives him to just completely take a sledgehammer to the radio show. Anyway.
Jalen Harrell, stock up.
Pretty good. Now, what is he beyond pretty good? Because you know who has done more, at least who has attracted more attention. Now, whether they have actually done more in the eyes of the coaching staff is a different matter entirely. But Titans fans seem, to want to slot Rashad Weaver into this third edge rusher role, and I just don't simply think that is how this is going based on what we've seen from Jalen Harrell. Now, could I be proven wrong here in a couple of weeks? Could the conversation completely change? Could an injury derail all of this? Yes, all of those things could happen. But they clearly see something in him. In fact, let me hear, Jackson, from Brian Callahan on Jalen Harrell at the press conference yesterday when talking. Was this the press conference yesterday or the post-game, the immediate post-game press conference on Saturday? Do you know?
This was yesterday.
Let's hear from Brian Callahan.
Yeah, surprised? No, I'm not surprised. He comes from he played in a similar style defense, and he's been coached. He came from a blue blood program. Those guys tend to show up. They play in big games. They played in winning programs. They know what it takes. So we've seen all that. And then he plays a physical brand of football in college, and it turns out he plays a physical brand of football here. He's been really, really good in the run. I think he's developing as a rusher. He's shown up. He's got production on a quarterback, but he's learning how to rush the NFL way, which I think is he's going to improve rapidly in that way too. But he's risen. I mean, he is as a 7th-round pick that nobody thought much of to being probably a pretty strong rotational player for us. It's been good to see.
Brian Callahan speaking about Jalen Harrell and his continued improvement over the course of the last couple of weeks. It sounds like he's going to be a solid rotational guy for him. He's been a quality player for them in preseason at least, whether that's flashes or one of those lies that training camp tells us. We'll have to wait to see because the competition will get much more real starting week 1 in Chicago, which we are not that far away from.
There's something to what he's saying, though, coming from a blue blood program, playing high-level college football, winning championships, because this feels eerily similar to the type of preseason discussions we were having about Caleb Murphy last year, who flashed in preseason games. UDFA, crazy numbers at Ferris State, and we thought, okay, could Arden Key told us on the show he is a natural-born pass rusher.
Yep.
Ends up not having any sort of impact, and we haven't really talked about Caleb Murphy this year. We're doing that with Jalen Harrell this year, but he was drafted. He comes from Michigan. He is a national champion, and he was a massive leader on one of, if not the best defense in the country. And he was going up against his former coordinator on Saturday, in Mike McDonald, who was his coordinator in Michigan in 2021 and moved him to off-ball linebacker. Didn't start a lot of games. And then Jesse Minter came in when McDonald left to join the Baltimore staff. Minter, the former Vandy DC, now Harbaugh's DC in L.A., and Minter put him back at outside linebacker, and he had a huge 2023 season. So I could easily see a scenario where Harrell is a valuable rotational piece at edge rusher, and suddenly the 180 that we've done at that position that went from missing a starter and having hardly any depth to apparently getting that starter back in Arden Key, as reported by Jeffrey Simmons, who apparently won his appeal and will not be suspended 6 games.
Confirmed.
Nothing from...
Well, not by the league.
Yeah, not confirmed, but reported by his teammate, Jeffrey Simmons. And then suddenly you see a depth piece starting to show up in the preseason. You feel a lot better about that group today than you did on Friday. Doesn't mean it's going to be among the best in the league.
No, it just means it won't be disastrous.
Exactly.
So, stock up Titans pass rush in general because, that happened, Saturday before the game. And Jeff Simmons even teasing the news. He's coming for all of our jobs in the media business. How about that? That saying, hey, Titans fans, got some news for you a little later in the day. And then closer to kickoff, he broke the news that Arden Key's suspension would be overturned, which, by the way, doesn't happen. Like, those PED suspensions, they do not get overturned that way. Rhett Bryan, Jim Wyatt, and I were in the Titans radio booth trying to go back and look for the precedent of the last overturned PED suspension. And at least, in the lead up, we're getting ready to go live to air, so it's not a ton of time to look it up, but we could not find a recent one. And again, Arden Key still can't comment on it. Brian Callahan still can't comment on it because the league hasn't made it official yet, which is going to be interesting to see what happens with Danico Autry, too, because there doesn't, I can't say that I've been tracking it as closely as Arden, but there doesn't seem to be that same dialogue around Danico Autry, who said that he would not be appealing his suspension.
Yeah, and NFL hasn't said anything. It's been an odd situation all around for both of those players.
Agreed.
Stock up Chance Campbell.
Yep.
Just keep showing up.
Productive again, around the football again.
Led the team in tackles again.
This is something that with now Otis Reese in the concussion protocol, Luke Gifford, we didn't see defense, so I can't say whether I saw Luke Gifford return to practice after also dealing with concussion last week. But
I don't think he played.
I don't have him down with a snap. He's one of the 38 that I have marked off here as not playing in the game on Saturday. But Otis Reese in the concussion protocol now. Cedric Gray missing time. Chance Campbell was already pushing for the 3rd/4th linebacker spot, and then with who's the dude that had the torn pec? Garrett Wallow, who was also listed as one of the primary reserve linebackers being out. Chance Campbell is now off-ball linebacker 3.
Feel like he's earned an opportunity to get some snaps with the ones. All he's doing is showing up at every chance he gets. That's all he's doing.
Are you trying to do something funny there? Showing up at every chance he gets? Is that the play-by-play guy on you?
That would have been better if I was trying to do that.
I think they would prefer to go with Gibbons. But if Campbell continues to make them at least think about it, then that's all you can ask of him, right? At this point. Stock up Mason Kinsey.
Really?
Competing for, he broke his finger in Saturday's preseason game, which is not ideal. And
Kinsey did?
He went back into the game after breaking his finger, and he says that he intends to practice.
Did Callahan say that yesterday?
No, Callahan did not say that yesterday, but Tehran talked to Mason Kinsey in the locker room afterwards and did determine that Mason Kinsey broke his finger when he was in the blue tent. The medical blue tent.
Had a drop on Saturday as well.
Did have a drop, but I think that on the whole, he's acquitting himself well enough. He looks competent out there against 2s and 3s. And also Kyle Phillips, who we'll get to a little bit later with the stock down stuff, not being a part of this competition, at least for the next week in the foreseeable future. At least that's their expectation. That would make me think Mason Kinsey stock up.
Mason Kinsey will not be on this 53-man roster.
I would not anticipate that.
But it's funny, people acting like he will be. No disrespect to Mason Kinsey, but if he hasn't been able to crack it, barring several injuries in the last few years when the Titans have had Chris Moore as wide receiver 2, is he suddenly going to be on the initial 53?
No, but he's never had a better chance.
But he keeps showing up, and he's
never
been
had
consistent.
a better chance. And this is his 5th NFL training camp as a D3 wide receiver from Berry College. So
it's impressive.
To his credit, he continues to hang around, and that's half the battle in the NFL. Stock down coming up next from the Titans' 2nd preseason game. A lot of different injury notes as well. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
11:02. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. On Saturday, the Titans won preseason game number 2, 16-15 over the Seattle Seahawks, staging a fourth quarter comeback with 3 made field goals by rookie kicker Braden Narvison, including a 59-yarder and this 46-yarder for the win.
46 yards, right hash for the win. Morgan Cox to snap. Zentner to hold. Snap. Set. Kick. Good! Narvison, MVP.
Mike Keith and Coach Mack on the Titans radio call. Starters did not play for both teams. Malik Willis got the start at quarterback. He was 12 of 16, 116 yards, and an interception. Mason Rudolph, 10 of 17 for 125 yards and a touchdown pass to Nick Westbrook-Akine. Titans will have 2 more padded practices Wednesday and Thursday this week before heading down to New Orleans for the preseason finale against the Saints next Sunday. Big recruiting weekend for the Vols, pulling commitments from 5-star tackle David Sanders and 4-star linebacker Jaden Harmon in the class of 2025. It moves Tennessee up to the number 6 class in the country per 247 Sports. And in Preds news, Kevin Weeks reported this morning that Preds goalie prospect Yaroslav Askarov has requested a trade. The Preds extended goalie UC Saros and added Scott Wedgwood from Dallas this offseason. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour is upon us. Welcome in on this Monday. We are happy to have you. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Preseason game number 2 in the books. Titans over the Seahawks 16-15. The finale of the exhibition time of year comes this Sunday. It is a 1 o'clock kickoff, I think, New Orleans on Eastern time. So it's a noon kick here in Nashville?
New Orleans on Eastern time? Buddy, what are you talking about? Louisiana? On Eastern time?
Maybe.
Louisiana is to the
Central
west
time?
of us, buddy.
Someone get this man a map.
Well, you haven't done the Tennessee geography bit in a while.
That's United States
Clearly,
geography,
we
buddy.
need to expand. I mean, my goodness. New Orleans on East.
You have to think about it for a second.
1 p.m. Central time to kick off.
Okay, very good. I'm glad we established that. See, I wouldn't have known. I would have prepared pregame at 9 a.m. and then been sitting there for an hour waiting for Brad and B-Hop, or Brad and Blaine.
Brad and B-Hop, this is a great start for you.
Yeah, we're off to a hot start. I feel like I'm just general. Do you guys have brain fog after training camp? Like at this time of year? Not that anybody likes to hear us complain about how fun our football jobs are, or how taxing our football jobs are. But like, I feel like training camp has gone on for a month, and that month has just been like one continuous day.
And we've only been out there 8 days.
No, I know, but like the whole experience of it, like, because we haven't had a day with nothing to do since training camp started. Like when I fly to New Orleans on Saturday, it'd be the first day that I haven't had something football related to do, and that's, getting on a plane. So I feel like I have training camp brain fog.
All right, so stock down on Buck's cognitive ability.
Truly, I'm really struggling right now.
Stock also down on Kyle Phillips for a second straight week.
He's going to miss time with a hamstring injury. They do not anticipate that he's going to play in the game. At least that was the line on Sunday. So, it's not over till it's over, but it feels like Kyle Phillips' time is very close to coming to an end here as a 2022 fifth-round pick. He has been the primary backup slot to Tyler Boyd, but the absence of special teams contributions and, again, availability, this is now multiple weeks that a hamstring issue is going to cost him. I mean, you honestly feel sick for him to an extent anytime this happens, and unfortunately it happens a lot in pro football. I feel horrible for Marlon Davidson, who is Jeff Simmons' primary backup and tore his biceps, done for the year. And I feel bad for Kyle Phillips, who had a legitimate shot to make this roster in a really, really tightly contested. They have a lot of those type of guys, right? They've got Kyle Phillips. They've got Mason Kinsey, Kyrus Jackson, and Jaquan Jackson. That backup slot discussion is pretty complex this time around. But for Kyle Phillips, I don't know that this weekend's events, including him missing time for injury and then expected to miss more time, I don't know if anybody's hurt more for their percentage chance of making the roster than Kyle Phillips right now.
And it felt like he was outside looking in on the punt return battle before the injury. They didn't even give him a crack at a punt return in the first preseason game. He dropped a couple in pregame warmups at Nissan Stadium. So, yes, it is not trending well for Kyle Phillips as other guys in the slot continue to step up, and they suddenly seem pretty deep there behind Tyler Boyd.
Well, that I guess has been the position. They had options, right? We didn't know how good the options were, and Jaquan Jackson has proved continues to prove it, right? He's not a proven commodity yet. We'll see what it looks like once the regular season gets here.
But it's like Chance Campbell, right? He just keeps showing up and taking every opportunity that's handed to him.
Sure. And that's the vast majority of it, though there are some things that we do not have access to seeing on how they operate in the meeting rooms, all these other things, like who these people are and everything else that's going on in their lives that may lead to them having success or failure. Because ultimately, we're going to be shocked by somebody who does or does not make the roster, right? Like there's going to be a name. Last year, Julius Chestnut, right, on the initial 53-man roster, where they're keeping 4 running backs and a tight end / fullback, and we're looking around like, what? So something like that is going to happen when this roster cut comes in 2 weeks. But I would go Kyle Phillips stock down first and foremost. I would go Jalen Duncan stock down second. That was not an inspiring performance from somebody who was not drafted by this coaching staff and who has already had multiple players brought in around him to supplement what he may or may not be.
At left tackle, too.
Well, that was the thing. So did you notice that Jerron Christian, who's been the backup left tackle,
did not start.
Was not the backup left tackle, or was not the starting left tackle. Yeah. And OJ, who went from first string to now third string very, very quickly, is out there when Malik starts. So Malik didn't start with the 2s. The 3s collectively started. And the thing that we were most caught up in was Malik Willis, when in reality, Brian Callahan was giving basically that entire unit the opportunity to start as a group. So Duncan, OJ, Malik Willis, and Chestnut, who it's worth mentioning was with the 3s, as opposed to Hassan Haskins when Mason Rudolph went in the game. I did think that was worth noting based on how they handled the snaps, because I was under the impression that we were going to see Malik Willis start with the 2s, and that was not the case.
Yeah. I wanted to put Julius Chestnut in the stock up because I thought he ran hard, but
stock down.
Brian Callahan calling Hassan Haskins a special teams demon is making me think, because it's hard for us to watch and evaluate, what a running back is doing on special teams and how that factors into that competition. But hearing Callahan say that, and it feels like there's not enough of a difference between Chestnut and Haskins as runners of the football to put Chestnut above him right now in that pecking order. It does feel like Hassan Haskins is RB3 if it were to end today.
All right, so I think people are going to get caught up in this. Who's the better running back?
The better runner of the football?
Chestnut.
Yeah, Chestnut's done more.
Chestnut is the better running back. Who's the better special teams player?
Yeah, Haskins.
The third running back, unless, something goes horribly awry, the third running back is not going to be playing that much in your offense. He's going to be playing infinitely more on special teams. So in that case, I do give the edge to Hassan Haskins, and I would say stock down on the initial. Again, these are quality practice squad candidates that we're talking about here. But I would say that stock down Julius Chestnut in that spot.
A lot of people in the F&M Bank chat pointing out Trey Avery, stock down.
Brother, burnt toast.
Got beat by Aesop Winston on the opening touchdown by the Seahawks.
That human being, Aesop Winston Jr., put some respect on his name, was a Washington State Cougar, because Kayla was sitting next to me and did note that. And then I said, that's not a real person. What do you mean? And then she said something like he had been drafted within the last 2 years. Then I looked it up on the flip card that we have in front of us. 4 years. He's been in the NFL 4 years. Aesop Winston Jr. had no idea who that human being was. Burnt toast Trey Avery.
Was a UDFA. He's on his 4th team in as many years. And he started his college career at City College of San Francisco before transferring to Washington State. That was tough. Trey Avery has not had a good preseason.
If you are Gabe Judy Lawley, are you looking at Trey Avery and being like, come on, well, what are we doing here? He's played more. He's gotten more real regular season NFL experience by a mile, obviously because Gabe Jeudy just got here. But the Trey Avery experience has been consistent this offseason, in which it has been consistently underwhelming or problematic, because that was a layup. I mean, it wasn't close. That was a layup touchdown on the opening series for Seattle, and for the Titans to try and get back in the mix that way. Trey Avery's a starting quarter for all intents and purposes until such time as Chido Awuzie or L'Jarius Sneed play in an actual game. So don't love that. Caleb Farley, question mark? They haven't done anything. They haven't put him on injured reserve or anything like that. So what do we make of Caleb Farley in the mix for CB5 at whatever point, if such time as he returns? Question mark. Am I reaching?
Yeah, he just hasn't been out there.
I know.
So I have a hard time seeing it. Eric Garrett, to me, has a quicker path to this 53 than Caleb Farley right now.
Think about that, what you just said.
He's not out there.
No, I know. My position would be that you put him on injured reserve just to help him get a paycheck this year. And I'm not like he's some kind of charity case, but God, if anybody ever deserved a break in some form or fashion. Coming up next, so the injury impact on positional battles up and down the roster where 38 Titans did not play. Also, on that note, were you okay with the way that Brian Callahan approached this particular preseason game, not playing the starters, understanding that you're going to get a dress rehearsal in this preseason finale in New Orleans? That's coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Pain from arthritis is just awful. Bone on bone, constant pain. It robs you of so much of the stuff that you love to do. But there are effective ways to deal with that pain, and I'm not talking about drugs or surgery. Hey, it's Buck Rising, reminding you that there are exciting new cellular therapies that can get you lasting relief, and the place to go to is QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics uses cutting-edge treatments that accelerate your own body's healing properties, revitalizing your joints so you can move again. If you're living with chronic pain from arthritis or injury, you need to know steroids and surgery and pain pills are no longer your only option. Learn how QC Kinetics can use advanced regenerative medicine to treat the pain, enhance your joints, restore your mobility, and give you long-term relief with no downtime. The local medical professionals at QC Kinetics are ready to help you get your life back with regenerative, restorative cellular treatments for your achy joints. It's the future of medicine. So call for a free consultation now. 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024 in Nashville, Clarksville, and Murfreesboro. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So, preseason game, a lot of reserves playing. 38 Titans did not play in this preseason game. Do you want the entire list? I've got it in front of me.
Please no.
But suffice to say that 7 wide receivers did not play in this game. Both the starting running backs, Will Levis, the starting offensive lineman, 3 of the tight ends that we expect to be on this roster, if not all 3 tight ends that we expect to be on this roster, and a variety of different defensive guys have missed a lot of preseason time anyway. So, in the absence of starters, there are some interesting conversations here that are now being impacted by injury as well, because Brian Callahan, as he's wont to do, opens his press conference now with injury updates so we can get it out of the way and move on with our day. And he said yesterday, here's the list, beyond guys who we knew were going to miss anyway. So that's not Kyle Phillips, who we talked about with a hamstring, or, for example, Mason Kinsey, who we talked about with the broken finger.
But he brought up Kyle Phillips.
So, Kearis Jackson, knee bruise. Jabari Small, concussion protocol. Josh Wiley, also concussion protocol. That was a practice situation. Wiley obviously didn't play in the game. Kyle Phillips probably out this week. Ryan Stonehouse, hoping to get some work this week. He did not punt on Saturday. TK McClendon, turf toe, and Otis Reese in the concussion protocol. So, Kearis Jackson and Kyle Phillips. That's Kearis Jackson getting a big break in the first preseason game and now potentially having it derailed by an injury in an unfortunate time.
He's questionable for the Saints preseason game.
Jabari Small does not impact the running back discussion. Josh Wiley does not impact the depth chart concern. Though the tight end stuff is interesting here. They have talked about the path for 4 tight ends because David Martin Robinson, they call him DMR, is somebody who is...
He's played well.
Interesting. He's acquitted himself well in the preseason. So, Kyle Phillips and Kearis Jackson have the greatest impact on a positional battle. And Otis Reese, who I thought had a nice couple days against the Seahawks, had a nice preseason game against San Francisco, and looked like he was trending in the right direction to having another performance in Seattle. Concussion protocol. We mentioned Luke Gifford, Garrett Wallow, and Cedric Gray already all missing time, and one done for the year in Wallow. So Otis Reese looked like he might have had a path to the 53 here. We'll see if he ends up being available for the game, but I would not expect to see him this week. TK McClendon. I would argue that the 2 best depth pieces on the Titans defensive line are now dealing with injuries. One's done for the season, and Marlon Davidson with a torn biceps. TK McClendon dealing with turf toe will probably miss a couple of weeks at minimum with this, which does not, completely remove him from the regular season conversation because we still have some time until September 8 in Chicago.
Abdullah Anderson was the replacement for Marlon Davidson and showed up.
Came in and made a play.
On Saturday.
But I do think that defensive line, where I felt good with Marlon Davidson and TK McClendon, I feel significantly more shaky about what's behind Sweat and Simmons and Sebastian Joseph Day right now.
Yeah, that did feel like what was developing into a strength of a unit, and now still is, but not nearly as deep. I mean, who is that most reliable depth piece at this point? I mean, McClendon turf toe, so he'll
be back.
He'll be back out there. Callahan said what, maybe a couple weeks?
Yeah.
Speaking of a couple weeks, Awuzie, I know he mentioned after the game on Saturday, could be back maybe
at
practice, maybe towards the end of this week. Wouldn't expect to see him Sunday.
Well, remember when he said a couple initially, and people took that too literally to mean 2, and now it's been the better part of a month that he's missed.
Yeah. And speaking of that, DeAndre Hopkins, you heard an air of a slight confidence that he could be ready for the Chicago game week 1.
I took that more as he's working through it, and that Treylon Burks is being, and they should be preparing Treylon Burks to start in week 1 because Treylon Burks is here, Treylon Burks is practicing, and he's Hopkins' primary backup in that role. but I still would be hesitant right now, unless we get some kind of a substantial update on Hopkins. It seems like, could be into the season.
So slot receiver has maybe seen the most injuries of any one position throughout camp. I mean, Tyler Boyd didn't practice last week.
Foot bruise.
Yeah. Didn't play, obviously, on Saturday. His spot on this team's not in question, but you're talking about Tyler Boyd, Kyrus Jackson, and Kyle Phillips, and Mason Kinsey that at one point or another have had an injury.
So let's hear from Brian Callahan on one of those players who's competing for one of those roles, as well as a considerable role on special teams. This is Brian Callahan speaking on Jaquan Jackson.
I think he had a pros mentality when he came in, which is all those things, is taking advantage of being able to ask questions and be around veteran players and try to take notes and observe. We joke around him sometimes. He's like an old man in a young person's body, because he's got a real maturity to him. And I think that served him really well, and I think that's what's allowed him to improve at the rate that he has. Is that he's very professional in his approach. He takes it very seriously, and he's got a maturity level to him that is allowing him to make, I think, gains at a really consistent basis. And it's because of all those things that he does, and he's willing to learn. And I think that's a huge part of being a young player. Is, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to take the advice from the people that are around you, take coaching, and can you then apply it? And I think he's been able to do all that.
So that was Brian Callahan speaking on Jaquan Jackson, called him an old man, right? And Tajay Spears brought this up with us when we had him on the radio show. Was that the first camp interview that we did?
It was.
That the two of them were living together. Obviously, they were college roommates at Tulane. And, we had brought up the idea because I think the college football, EA College Football 25 had just come out. And I just assumed surely the two of them have it if they're living together and leading Tulane to national championships on EA College Football. And Tajay was very quick to point out, no, we're not really about that. Jaquan Jackson is very much about his business. He's focused on all other kinds of like actual real life marketing or not marketing opportunities, but business opportunities, and also trying to be a better football player. So you've seen that come through.
This was the interview where Lucas admitted to breaking into people's houses to play the game?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. At least if you're going to have some breaking and entering on your record, that you admit to it publicly in a space that's documented for all to hear and see and find retroactively for whenever I decide to call the police on you and report it.
I had a key. I am confident that I'd be able to call sufficient witnesses to the stand to exonerate me of all charges.
So, Callahan and Jaquan Jackson. Let's hear from Jaquan Jackson himself on the idea of getting reps right now as a young team.
We have a lot of pride, as you see from last year to this year, this team is a young team. And I think this team you have to rely on not just the vets, the younger guys got to step up and make plays because, the vets going to do their thing. But when the younger guys go out there, they got to execute, just like you're a vet already. So you got to switch your mind of not trying to be a young guy, but put your mind to where you're a vet. You've been in the league for 3 years or plus, because that's how you got to come each and every day. If you keep thinking about, I'm a rookie, I'm not going to do you can't think like that. Somebody, God forbid, somebody get hurt, next man up.
Callahan said. So that is Jaquan Jackson speaking, and my follow-up there was about Colt Anderson talking Brian Callahan into kicking on the 59-yard field goal as opposed to what he was initially going to do, which was punt, and the idea of having a special teams coordinator that played in the league. I mean, Colt Anderson and Anthony Levine are not that far removed from being NFL football players. So to have those two running the special teams operation seems to have a lot of trust and buy-in from a lot of young players who are trying to cut their teeth on not just offense or defense, but special teams as well. Jael is saying that Lucas is about to get an email from HR about his criminal history. I am going to suggest slightly to the suits downstairs that perhaps we run another background check on Lucas to see if his employment here is still viable. All a part of my plan to get him sent back to that smelly little room where we keep Jackson.
See, your mistake is you're showing your cards. You're just laying out your plan for all to hear, including me. Meanwhile, I'm moving in silence behind you, and you have no idea when I'm going to knife you in the back.
I'm upfront about it. I'm telling you the ways that I'm going to try and undermine you. You are just working in the shadows.
Exactly.
So, on the whole, position groups, now through 2 preseason games. We did this after the first one. Let's do this after the second one. Is there a position group that we feel substantially different about today than we did heading into Saturday's game? Quarterback, off-ball linebacker, pass rush, because we haven't really talked about the biggest news on Saturday was that Arden Key is not going to be suspended.
Yeah.
And because it's been a couple of days since then, it feels like old news, but we haven't done the radio show since that, obviously. We did the pregame show.
Well, then that's the answer, edge rusher, because you learned that Arden Key allegedly will be back for those 6 games. And
allegedly.
Yeah, it's not official. Once it's official, we'll talk about it like it's official.
Sure.
And Jalen Harrell just continues to emerge. Everything else has kind of been a continuation of what we've seen in camp. Like, I don't feel any differently about the punt return spot after Saturday as I did a week ago because Jaquan Jackson showed up in that spot again. I don't feel that much differently about the kickoff return spot. Kearis Jackson had a 30-yard return, got it out to the 40 before he went out with his knee bruise. So everything has kind of been a continuation. Like all of our stock ups, Jaquan Jackson, Chance Campbell, same guys we were talking about after the first preseason game.
I will say this, though. An extended look at the Titans' backup offensive line situation will give you hives. I mean, listen, nobody has good backup offensive linemen. It's why. Remember how reticent the Eagles were to even move on from Andre Dillard the year that his deal was getting ready to expire as a first-round pick? People just don't have quality offensive line depth that way.
Well, the third teamers started and struggled right off the bat.
I mean, the pressure was constant, and Malik, not getting rid of the ball fast enough, which is something that we were keeping an eye out for as well. But tough not to when the pressure is immediately in your face. Titans offensive line depth, though, with OJ, who you thought, okay, maybe there's something there where he's running with the ones until such time as NPF comes back. He's dropped pretty considerably down to 3. I mean, he's behind Jerron Christian and Leroy Watson at this point.
Unsurprisingly.
I mean, he went from a starter to a 3.
He was a
starter. Slightly surprised by
He was a starter because Nicholas Petit-Frere was not out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not surprised by it because Jerron Christian and Leroy Watson are veterans that have worked with Bill Callahan previously that were brought in this offseason with, you would imagine, some input by Bill Callahan, while John Ojukwu is a second-year UDFA at Boise State. So I'm not surprised that Christian and Watson are ahead of John Ojukwu.
It's happened pretty quickly, though, so it just feels like they were kind of biding their time, to your point. But I thought that maybe if OJ was good enough to run with the ones at any point, that might create some kind of quality depth situation. And it's just one player out of 5, right? Jalen Duncan, to me, is underwhelming. If Jalen Duncan was not on this roster, I would not be surprised, based on the amount of additional tackle depth that they've brought in. And it's not like he doesn't have talent, but there's just something about the finish there, or lack thereof, that I don't love when I watch him.
I'll be curious about what their tackle depth looks like in terms of who's the swing tackle going to be. Is it a swing tackle situation? Is your backup left tackle also your backup right tackle, or is it a Jerron Christian backs up J.C. Latham, and Leroy Watson backs up Nicholas Petit-Frere?
I just don't think it's going to be that specified. I just don't think you can do that, right? You have to have both prepared to play both positions at any given point. We'll note also pre-snap penalties back for Titans depth offensive linemen. You had a variety of different false start penalties. You had Thomas Odukoya also got a false start penalty. You had holds as well. After having a first half last week where there was not a pre-snap penalty, it was very quickly offense getting set behind the sticks with those operational issues.
10 penalties for 90 yards, most of them on the offense, I believe. Also, it seems like Dylan Radins is the starter at right guard. Trending
in that direction. Let me read the exact quote from Brian Callahan, because I do think it's worth giving the full context of this. So he did say that it's trending in the direction that Radins and NPF would be the starters there, but that he reserves the right to make any kind of an additional determination as they get closer and closer to the season. But trending in the right direction right now. I think what you see with our starting group, which was Dylan and Nick, are trending in the direction as being the starters. It's not over yet for sure, but those guys have performed well enough at that point that if you walk out with the starters against New Orleans, those would be the guys that are starting this week. So again, I reserve all right to pull the plug on that one if I so choose to. But as of right now, those guys have been the guys that have played the best. All right. So, I mean, one, you can't just give them the jobs, right? With Radens and NPF, there has to be at least some semblance of, no, go out there and earn it. Like, I'm not giving it to you yet. There's still weeks of camp remaining, so I reserve the right to make an additional determination, but right now that looks like their best 5, which is what Titans fans kind of seem to want to see, at least from Radens. They want to see Dylan Radens contribute in some meaningful way beyond spot duty as a former second-round pick.
Yeah, he didn't necessarily seize that role, right? As soon as Sadiq Charles retired abruptly, but it does seem like now there is a little bit of separation.
Well, and it does, I mean, they're at least giving themselves wiggle room in the quotes around this stuff to say, hey, I don't know just yet. But they're also still saying that about the backup quarterback job.
Yeah.
And I think that we all understand that they have their backup quarterback determination made. So, offensive line, we think we have the starting 5. Defensive front with Arden Key, feel concrete about that. Linebackers, I still think that Gibbons, I think that they're ultimately going to end up going with Gibbons week 1. No matter how much Campbell continues to kind of make his presence known there, I do think that Gibbons is their preference. But doesn't mean that Campbell can't push him in that role alongside Kenneth Murray. Corners, we think we know the starters, right? We know who they want out there. It's McCreary, it's Snead, it's Awuzie, but McCreary's been the only one who's perpetually available. And the safeties, pretty telling to see Elijah Molden out there late into that preseason game. And Brian Callahan asked yesterday about the idea of could he potentially give you some versatility as a corner as they watch Trey Avery get burnt. But Callahan said he doesn't really view Elijah Molden as a corner and that he's handled the safety competition well since they brought in all different kinds of pieces and parts around him.
Well, Molden was out there from the jump. I mean, I wrote it down as the game kicked off. Elijah Molden playing ... not a starter.
Yeah.
Starters didn't play Saturday. Elijah Molden did.
NWI playing on Saturday, not a starter, but did you hear Callahan's explanation about that? The Traylon Burks plays 1 role and NWI plays 3.
Yeah.
So it was going to be more specific for Traylon, or more, there's greater emphasis on Traylon because he is DeAndre Hopkins if DeAndre Hopkins cannot be ready for week 1 or potentially week 2 at that point. So that is the latest injury impact on the position battles. Let's take a quick pivot away from the Titans just briefly to highlight some Tennessee volunteer recruiting success. How often do you get to say that the Vols stole one from Alabama, flipped one from Alabama, took one from the hands of the mighty, despised Crimson Tide, recruiting victories everywhere. Josh Heupel on the ascent, Rocky Top, baby, into the sun. We'll talk about it coming up next. Two Rivers Ford is your Ford Bronco headquarters. I love being a Two Rivers Ford customer, not just because I got my Ford Explorer from them a couple of years ago and got to custom order my Ford online at tworiversford.com, but because they continue to go above and beyond for me and all of their customers who have done business with them over the course of the last over 40 years as a locally owned and operated business here in Middle Tennessee. They are also your Ford Bronco headquarters. So if you love the Ford Broncos that you're seeing out there on the road, no matter what style or trim package of Ford Bronco that's out there, their non-commissioned sales experts are there to help inform, educate you, and let you test drive those great Bronco vehicles for yourself, whether it's new or certified pre-owned vehicles that you're in the market in, or not even in the market for a vehicle and just want to learn more about the Two Rivers Ford experience. Go see my friends at Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, just 7 miles east of Nashville International Airport, or check out their inventory online at tworiversford.com. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, 615-737-1045. The number, if you want to jump in. I saw that Will Levis was on Good Morning Football today. I have not yet seen the interview. I heard the bulk of the conversation was mayonnaise and cologne related. But if you would like to see Will Levis on Good Morning Football, I'm sure there are clips that are making the rounds. We teased here great success for the Tennessee Volunteers over the weekend. 5-star David Sanders is who Tennessee lands, the nation's number 2 recruit in the 2025 class. This is a huge coup for Tennessee, who chose the Vols over Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, and South Carolina. Exactly the caliber, except for South Carolina, the caliber of program that you need to be not just competing against, but winning against in some of these critical battles. The number 1 offensive tackle in the 2025 class commits to the University of Tennessee.
Do you remember, just give me what you remember from the moment Josh Heupel was hired, about the general reaction amongst the Tennessee fan base. When Heupel was hired in, I think it was January of 2021.
The guy can't recruit. That the program, who was his predecessor at UCF?
Scott Frost.
Right. And Scott Frost had great success with UCF and parlayed that into the job at his alma mater at Nebraska, which, of course, went up in flames so fast. What I remember about Heupel being the discourse is, well, he couldn't even maintain what Scott Frost did at UCF, and he's not a good recruiter in a state like Florida where you should be able to capitalize.
Yeah, it was underwhelming. The hire was underwhelming because it was, well, at least it'll be fun. That's how people sort of couched it. Like
offense.
It'll be fun. Offense, points, yes, but he's not a proven recruiter, and the recruiting tailed off. The wins tailed off at UCF a little bit down the stretch during his time down there. Recruiting and defense, right? Those are the 2 big concerns. How's he going to recruit? Who's going to be his defensive coordinator? And he's kind of answered those questions. I mean, Tennessee's defense is not the first thing you think about when you think about the Tennessee Vols, but the best player on this team is a defensive player. Probably the best unit on this team is on the defense up front. Front 7, defensive line, the deepest unit, the most talented in terms of top-end NFL draft talent. And then in recruiting, this team is trending, or this class is trending towards a top 5 class in 2025. They have more quarterback recruiting momentum than any program in all of college football. And they're doing it by getting in early with guys. Faison Brandon, the quarterback, they've been talking to since he was a middle schooler. David Sanders, they've been talking to since he was in 8th grade. They were the most consistent team in his ear and one of the earliest teams in his recruitment. And then flipping players like Jaden Harmon from Alabama, they're using NIL properly. So he's answering those questions that were big concerns, and obviously the offense is there, and they're looking to restore what they were in 2022 on the offensive side of the ball with Nico. But this is a huge, huge get. Can you tell me, David Sanders is according to 247 Sports, 2nd highest rated commitment in Tennessee football history. Who's the first?
Answer the question. I'm not going to get it.
No, you're definitely not.
No way I get this one.
It's Bryce Brown, the running back who signed with Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
And, was at Tennessee for about 5 minutes. His freshman year, did a few things, was backing up Marlon Humphrey, if I remember correctly. And then Brown transferred to, I think, Kansas State, bounced around, ended up popping up in the NFL for like a couple of games. Didn't he have one like big performance with the Eagles or something one time? Very random. Anyway, Bryce Brown is just that one, the highest rated recruit in Tennessee history, which is hilarious. But David Sanders is number 2. Eric Berry's number 3. Nico is number 4. So you've got 2 of the top 4 highest rated recruits in program history, either on campus as your starting quarterback or about to be on campus in a year. So Tennessee is building in recruiting and supplementing in the portal, kind of like we talk about with what the Titans need to get back to, building in the draft, supplementing in free agency. But they are building and recruiting in a way that a lot of people did not think possible when Heupel was hired.
He's the 22nd commitment in the 2025 class so far. And to the point of Tennessee mobilizing, just basically playing all the right notes, in a time frame that has never been more advantageous for them to take advantage of with a major brand like the University of Tennessee is. The name, image, and likeness mobilization has been second to just about none anywhere in the country. Josh Heupel is and his staff and the Spire sports people and Dondi Plowman and the athletic department and administration around this stuff have all collectively done a really good job at being proactive on so much of this stuff, and it's paying dividends. I was listening to our buddy Josh Pate's show, Late Kick, I was listening to it this morning on my drive in, but he does it Sunday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And he was talking about the idea that Tennessee has the potential here to be legitimately elite in ways that we have not yet seen. Talking about the void that Alabama under Nick Saban is leaving behind, because Kalen DeBoer will now have to carve out his own role here and his own legacy here and establish what Alabama is going to be under DeBoer. We don't really have a grasp of what Tennessee can be in this new modern age of college football. Tennessee has been a power. It has been a long, long time since then. Now, with things trending in the right direction, and I don't want to say the last box for them to check, but one of the biggest boxes that they had yet to check is recruiting on an elite level that they seem to be trending in the right direction of, whether it be quarterbacks, now offensive linemen. You're talking about quality defenders that they're able to sign and that they're able to recruit. This is the exact kind of incremental stuff that you want to see en route to getting this program on par with Georgia, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, top of the heap type national championship contenders.
I think I said Marlon Humphrey, that Bryce Brown was playing behind Marlon Humphrey in that 2009 season at running back.
Corner.
Not the Ravens and former Alabama DB. Thank you, Brandon, in the F&M Bank chat that corrects me. It is Marlon Lane, the former Tennessee running back that was ahead of Bryce Brown. But
it was Monterio Hardesty.
Was it Marlon Lane was on that team, though, right? Or was he later?
I think he might have been on that team. This
You're
was
right,
like
though.
2009.
No, you're right. It was
his only season at Tennessee. Rushed for about 500 yards that year.
It was Monterio Hardesty. The offensive line class that Tennessee is now putting together, with obviously David Sanders as kind of the crown jewel, they got Douglas Utu, the 4-star offensive tackle out of Bishop Gorman in Vegas. So that 1-2 punch is among the best in terms of offensive line recruitment in the class of 2025. And that was still a question that remained for me with Heupel, because the best offensive lineman so far in the Heupel era, either he inherited like a Cooper Mays or a Darnell Wright, or he got as a transfer like Lance Hurd out of LSU. So it's good to see Tennessee start to build on the offensive line out of high school when they've come in second a lot on these guys. Jordan Seaton, the 5-star who ends up at Colorado. Francis Malagoa, the 5-star who ended up at Miami. Tennessee was close with those guys, but ultimately could not land them. So, yeah, it's huge news for Tennessee. And Josh Heupel had a big old smile on his face at his press conference today as, he gives practice updates as we draw closer to week 1 against UTC next Saturday.
Be honest, did you smoke a victory cigarette after you flipped Jaden Harmon from Alabama to Tennessee when you saw this tweet from Jaden Harmon saying, "I want to thank the entire Alabama staff for believing in me and giving me the opportunity to play for a great program. Respect my decision. #GBO." You have not gotten to celebrate many flip moments like that, especially with Alabama being on the losing side of things as Tennessee fans.
Sure. Well, and look, Alabama is right up there at the top of the 2025 class. They're second right now behind Ohio State on 247 Sports. But, yeah, those are the things you need to do. You need to close on the blue-chip 5-star guys, and you need to win those battles against Alabama, against Georgia. Used to be against Clemson, not necessarily so much, just in terms of bordering states. But, yeah, you couldn't have had a better recruiting weekend for Tennessee football as we get closer to the season.
Buck, you know where I went. The Alabama message boards. Just to drink in some salt.
How'd that go?
Oh, it was wonderful. Oh, I just had a good laugh. It was a good 10, 15 minutes of scrolling. Oh, it was great.
Just doom scrolling and sustaining yourself off the tears of Alabama fans?
It's not doom scrolling. It's happy scrolling.
Somebody else's doom is what you're happy scrolling.
Absolutely, as long as it's Alabama fans.
There it is. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the conversation. Coming up next, we'll pivot back to the Titans. The precedent for overturned PED suspensions. We'll talk about how rare it is to see something like Arden Key's circumstance go the other way. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. On Saturday, the Titans won preseason game number 2, 16-15 over the Seahawks, staging a fourth quarter comeback with 3 made field goals by rookie kicker Braden Narveson, including a 59-yarder and a 46-yarder for the win. Starters did not play for both teams. Malik Willis started at quarterback, 12 of 16, 116 yards, and an interception. Mason Rudolph went 10 of 17 for 125 yards and a touchdown pass to Nick Westbrook-Akine. The Titans will have 2 more padded practices Wednesday and Thursday this week before heading down to New Orleans for the preseason finale against the Saints next Sunday. Big recruiting weekend for the Tennessee Vols, pulling commitments from 5-star offensive tackle David Sanders and 4-star linebacker Jaden Harmon in the class of 2025, moving Tennessee up to the number 6 class in the country per 247 Sports. In Preds news, Kevin Weeks reported this morning that Preds goaltending prospect Yaroslav Oskarov has requested a trade. The Preds extended goalie UC Saros and added Scott Wedgwood from Dallas this offseason. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on this Monday. Thanks for hanging out. We appreciate you guys spending a little time with us. Hope your weekend was great. Busy weekend on the sports side of things with preseason football. There is college football on the horizon at the end of this week.
Yes.
Everybody excited about it. We will spare you the football drop until there is actual football on that day, but it is close, and you can feel it. Preseason finale coming up this weekend. I'll have coverage for you from New Orleans. I'll fly down Saturday. We'll have the Lee Company countdown to kickoff on Sunday. Get you everything that you need to know as well in this week leading up. Rashad Johnson is the name that you just said in the back of my ear?
Yes.
That is who? That's the Alabama defensive back that we were trying to come up with his name that played for the Tennessee Titans. It was on the roster and doing an obscure radio show with Derrick Henry before Derrick Henry was ultimately Derrick Henry. Thank you, Jackson. What a pull.
Man, tough day for us on the callbacks. The name, just sitting around naming random athletes.
Brother, I thought Louisiana was east of Tennessee today. I don't think that's the worst thing we've done today.
I made Marlon Humphrey a running back for Tennessee in 2009. You know, man, I used to be so good at that stuff. Like the 2007 to 2010, 2011 range, I could tell you every player that came through Tennessee, other SEC schools, but it's starting to fade. And I don't like that. I hate that.
Well, now you know how I feel, because I feel, one, this is a trend. Once you get further and further removed from the education system, you just feel like you get dumber instead of smarter year over year. And I feel like I'm the dumbest I've ever been at this point in my life. And it's like you're supposed to, how many thousands of hours of experience do you need to have with something before you're considered an expert or a master at it?
10,000.
Yeah, I feel like we've done 10,000 hours of the radio show. And all this thing has done is go straight into the ground.
Actually,
we are considerably worse as a product after 10,000 hours than we were when we started this damn thing.
I'd love to do the math on that and find out exactly how many hours of the radio show have been done.
More than enough to where we should be better at this.
What was the start date?
I don't know, March 2021.
It was
Jackson's getting on it.
You'd probably find a press release online if you Google it or something like that. I think it was like the first or second week of March in 2021 that we started the radio show. Surely to God, there's been 10,000 hours of this crap by now.
Have you ever just dug up something from school, a paper or something? Because Blue, who you know, Blue,
for the audience who doesn't,
my friend Blue, dug up
my dog Blue, my boy Blue.
He's unpacking a bunch of stuff, and he dug up some papers from his soil science classes, and in a bunch of classes he'd taken. He told me he was looking at them, reading through them, and it was like a foreign language. He was like, I wrote all these words. I don't recognize any of it. I don't know what any of it means, and it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
So it's scary.
It's really, really tough. Jonathan Hernandez, where you can interact on the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. on YouTube says, the ineptitude makes it great. In fact, we love you guys all the more for it. Good, because we're not going to get any better if this is evidence of anything, we're only going to get worse. Anyway, things that are getting better. Your pass rush. Congratulations to you. If you're a Titans fan in the audience, Arden Key is scheduled, though not officially, not suspended by the league. All right, so a couple of different things here on the timeline. The report from Kaharski that Arden Key was going to be suspended for PEDs for 6 games at the start of the season came around July the 30th.